Wicked mini paintings. Yeah. Welcome everyone, my name is Brent Lee and welcome to Wicked Mini Painting How to Paint Tutorials. In this video I'm going to show you guys how to paint black armor. We're going to be utilizing liquitex inks to do this. I was using the technique and the style from another baller YouTuber named MarcoFrisoni. I will make sure to put that link down in the description. He does a very spectacular job on explaining color theory of how you mix your blue, yellow, and magenta together to give an off shade of black, and utilizing it as a technique on a model as he shows how he does his black armor as well. So I'm going to be utilizing his idea, his technique, and applying it into my art, making black armor for you guys to watch. So I'm going to make this video all for you guys, and it's going to explain the step-by-step process of what I do on how to make this model into a beautiful, gorgeous black armor that has like the radiance of other colors that are in it because of the mixtures that we are doing with the liquitex inks. Also, if you guys are into video, I do also have my Twitch stream, which you can come and hop on in. It's twitch.tv/Wicked Mini Painting if you want some live content. If you guys do like this video, make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe to it and hit that little notification bell when a new video comes aboard. And without further ado, let's get our wicked on. Alright guys, I'm doing a little bit of a voiceover right now. Just air compressor was so loud. So I'm going to just kind of talk to you as we're watching this video exactly what I did. So as you can see on the model, it's all primed with a really bright gray. You can even go with a white. The reason I went with that, so the pigmentation can kind of get a crazy absorption through liquitex inks. So as you see in the video, I had that black, and of course we're going to be using the airbrush. So that was the AK black. And so we're just doing the thing that we normally do. Start putting a little bit of black in that pot. And then we're going to follow it up with some flow improver. And then we'll put a little bit of water, so we'll have a little bit of flow going through there. Now the reason for all that is that you want to make sure that it covers, that black is going to cover the entire model, because with the acrylic black over the model, as you can see in that video, there was that flow improver, just a few drops. It was just a couple drops of black, a few drops of flow improver. Get a nice good consistency. You can see I had some water right there. Just kind of add some water, not a whole lot. Stir it all up, bubble it up. But the reason why I'm going with this black, all right, is that I need to cover over that primer. And it also does two factors here when we're working with liquitex inks. So that black acrylic is going to give a nice good coat. Okay, over top of that, it's going to fill in the shadows, all the shadow effects, and also there's not going to be any kind of pigmentation, saturation that happens with prime, where the prime like sucks and absorbs the color. Especially when you're using liquitex inks, it's so transparent that you want to make sure that you have a nice good base coat of color on there. So you can see that I'm just airbrushing it nice and smooth all across the surface, get every little bit of it, so you don't see any more of that gray, white on the figure. So we'll just sit there and just kind of watch as I'm working through this process. I'm making sure that I'm making this as completely raw, uncut. You're going to see some fades in and out. It's going to be normal because after I got everything painted, I had to wait for it to dry. Now, if you were working on an assembly line, I would do like an assembly line of like 10 of those 10 of those intercessors, right? And then once I'm all done painting all of them black, then we can move on to the next step, because the first model will be nice and dry. But since I was just doing just one model just to show you guys how I do my black armor, I was just I had to give it a little bit of space, you know, a little bit of time. So you can see me, I was just like, oh, I'm hitting little spots here and there, and now I will set it down, and then it'll fade out, and we'll fade back into the next one. So I had to wait because it took me about like 10 minutes per each one. Now here comes the step 2 part. Okay, now you can see the model, it's all nice and dry. Okay, so now I'm setting it off to the side, pulling out a little petri dish, a little mixing dish that I'm going to be using. And the first thing we're going to be doing is the acrylic white. It's that titanium white. All right, the reason why we're going to be using this white is we're going to start adding our highlights and the consistency of how it brings out the liquitex inks when we mix those to give you those off shades of black. And as you saw right there, I was using Airbrush Thinner. I think it works really good with acrylics, the acrylic ink, excuse me, sorry. So the acrylic ink, I think the Airbrush Thinner works the best. Flow Improver takes a little too long for it to dry. It can sit there for a day, you know, it could be hours for that to dry. So I use Airbrush Thinner. Okay, so now you see me, I'm busting out the airbrush right there, filling the cap. It doesn't need a lot because I'm only using one little figure. Even that's too much. That's probably enough to go through another 10-20 models if you keep jamming with it. You can see I'm adjusting my pressure. So when you're doing whites, you want to make sure that it's coming out proper without having too much speckling effect. So a lot of air, very little paint. Okay. Now when you see me when I'm hitting this model, I'm kind of utilizing like how the light of my lamps are kind of reflecting off of that black. And so you can see me as I'm highlighting that black. Just slowly going around, getting all those areas where like the light is going to be shining the most. I'm mostly hitting the legs, you know, the shoulders, the arms, just the top part of the model, like from head to the feet. So like as you saw as I tipped it right there, you can see like where my light spots are going to be, my dark spots are going to be. So that's what this whole process is for, and it's going to accentuate the liquitex inks when we get those things mixed together. So yeah, we're just going to sit here and watch as I'm hitting all the exposed parts of the armor. And as you see it right there, you can see like the dark areas. So I just keep on hitting it up, making sure that it has not too bright. Okay. I feel like if you make it as bright as what the primer was when you originally started, it takes too many coats with liquitex inks when you mix them for the off shades of black. And when you do that, it kind of causes you have to put so many layers on there, and with so many layers you can get, you know, runoffs and stuff like that. So as you can see, I put the white back into the petri dish, and then I went and cleaned out my airbrush afterwards so we can work on the next step. But you're going to need to keep some of that white for further down into the video. So you can see it's not too crazy. As you see it spin around, you can see my bright spots, you can see the dark spots on the figure. Perfect highlighting right there, but not too intense. Okay, so the next step, and here we go. So now we're going into the next step here. So I had to wait for it to dry, so that's why you have these little fade out, fade in kind of things. So now you see the model, it's nice and dry, great highlights. Take another petri dish, mixing dish, and now we're going to be busting out the warm colors. The warm colors, that'll be your green. And I was trying to rub it off so you can see that it was green. And then you have magenta. Okay, so I have both of these colors. Make sure they're both opened at the time so you can kind of mix back and forth. I think I did probably about 5 drops. 4, 5, yeah, about 5 drops a piece. You can see how my hand was raising every time, so it was kind of showing you that that's how many drops I was doing. 3, 4, 5, there we go. So I did about 50-50 mix right at the moment, but you can see that the 2 bottles are right above there. So I'm mixing it because you got the green and the red, okay? So it's going to give you not necessarily a black and not necessarily a brown. So you're going to be bouncing back and forth with these colors. The greens are going to make it a little bit darker going to the black of that off shade of that black. And now you can see in that Petri dish, it's nice and black. And now you can see where I'm rubbing the edge of the Petri dish. It shows what my actual color as it kind of pulls back into the mixing pot right there. And then I put another little squirt of magenta, just another drop, because I want it a little bit more on the red side more than the green side, but that is entirely up to you. You can actually force more color of which one that you prefer the most. So if I was doing some Dracari or whatnot, I would probably put a little bit more of the green in there, so it'll show a little bit more green for the Dracari. But for this Black Templar, or that's what we're using this one for, is to kind of make a Black Templar black armor. But you can use this for not just Black Templar, but anything from like your Orcs, Dracari, whatever else that you wanted to paint black. So now with this, I'm sitting there testing it out, and there's a little bit of a buckle problem that I have here, is because it was coming out and I was having a hard time with it. And then you'll see later that I forgot to add Airbrush Thinner in there. So I'm sitting there hitting it going, why is it not flowing properly? It kind of beads up a little bit if you don't have some. And then I'm like, oh, see my finger? I was like, wait a minute. There we go. Let's bust out some of that Airbrush Thinner. So it was beading up a little bit, kind of like sweat beads on the armor when I was doing that. So now I bubbled it all up, and now this is going to be your warm color of the black. Okay, so now I'm going to feed this all up into the shadow areas of where the highlights are. So you see where the bright highlights are, and now I'm feeding all of that into the shaded areas. I'm waiting, the bright spots are going to be for our cold colors that we'll be doing in the next clip. So you just take your time, low air pressure. I say low air pressure because when you start painting, it's so thin, it's easy to get it to run, okay? So what I mean by running is that it's so much buildup that you can kind of see it kind of just dripping off of the figure. So just kind of take your time. It's very transparent, and you just want to go in with those layers. One layer at a time. Just kind of hit it up, all up into the shadows. You see me just taking my time, just implementing it very softly inside there. It gives you a nice, beautiful red. It kind of comes off a little brown too, but you can still see a little bit of the shades of green that are in there too. So long as you have your mixtures of the magenta, the yellow, and the blue, and that'll give you an off shade. Some of those colors in the liquitex inks will give you a little bit more heavier of one color than the other. So just play around with it. It's absolutely so much fun to do, thinking about colors and color theories. And then when you start putting it on there, it's gonna look brown or it's gonna look red, and you're just like, shoot, man. But that's the whole point of this, is that it's not exactly black, okay? And then it starts getting heavier and heavier with the black once you start getting the layers put on there, okay? So you can see I'm hitting it real heavy in those legs. I do that because when you start rotating it in the light, when you start seeing me, I think I'll start rotating in light here, to see the reflections of the colors that are happening during that process. So yeah, so we're just kind of sitting there, just take it time, take it easy. Oh, I'm zooming it up for you so you can see. Still has a little bit of red in there, you know, but it's perfect. I love it. This is like the only way I like doing armor. After it's done drying too, you're gonna realize it's gonna have quite a bit of a sheen to it, a little shine job. It's just the medium that's mixed with that liquitex ink. You can keep it as a shiny black armor, or you can probably hit it with a little bit of matte varnish to tone it down, but it is entirely up to you. So yeah, we'll just sit here and just kind of watch as I'm filling in all this shadow works and then going back into it again and again and again, just layering process. And you get to decide how heavy, how dark you want to go, or how light you want to go, because you can literally go all the way until it turns completely black, kind of like what I'm doing here, or you can keep a little bit more of that red or a little bit of that green and just kind of let it sit just like it is. But I went in super heavy just to show you guys that that color actually does turn completely black. So that was probably about 3 or 4 coats. And I was sitting there just kind of looking around, twirling it in the light just to see what we got going there. All up in the shadows of that chest, as you can see. Really focusing on that, just putting those in there. So those are going to be your warm colors, so when you actually start reflecting light off of there, you're going to start seeing some of the reds and the greens that are in the mixture of that process. And it's really cool because it gives you that that environmental, like where that character is in the environment, where you can start seeing some of the reds and the greens. So it's like possible, like earth, you know, the dirt, ground, grasses, whatever. And then when you actually put a true base, you know, shake base or whatever you're gonna do for the base, it'll kind of help reflect those colors pretty well. So now that's probably about 5, I want to say about 5 coats right there. And I was pretty content with that. So then with that 5 coats, it's really heavy. So I have to let it sit and dry. So that probably takes about another 10 or 15 minutes at most for a single figure. So, and I put it on pretty heavy. And then that is it for that step there. And then we're going to start proceeding to the next one. So the next step here is going to start adding our cold colors. So everything that's highlighted, that you can still see that bright white from the white liquitex ink. Now I'm going to be using that vivid red orange and mixing it with that blue. Alright, so that gives you those 3 color spectrums. And with those color spectrums there, we're going to get a cold off shade of black. So we're going to be doing the same thing. I believe it was 4, 5, 6. I think it was like 4, 5 or 6 drops. And then blue is very heavy. So when you're using blue, I try not to use too much of the same. So that one is like 6 to 5 drops of orange to 3 to 4 drops of blue, and that's gonna give you like a purple. Okay, and so now you're gonna see me adding a little bit more orange into it. Okay, and then you're gonna start seeing it in there. It's gonna be kind of like a weird brown. Okay, when you're working with this mixture here, when you start applying it on there, apply it lightly because it's gonna come on very purplish, but then it dries with an orange hue to it. Okay. So you can see I'm just trying to get that good little mix in between, and you'll know it when you start mixing and playing around with it. It's super fun to do. I highly recommend giving it a whirl. This is so much fun. See, now I remember the airbrush thinner this time. Put a couple drops. It just doesn't take much because the ink is already very thin already. You know, it's already super thin, but you need a little bit of flow coming out of that airbrush. So I keep pressing it up against the side, waiting for it to kind of drip down and see what kind of color I got. So I think when I was mixing that, it had a real orange brown look. So when you did that, it will go on looking purple but drying really harsh orange. Okay, so you don't want it to come in too heavy on the orange. I want more of the blue, the coldness. Alright, and being smart and moving my inks out of the way so I don't knock them all over. Pour it in the airbrush, and then on we go with this one. Okay, now I'm hitting all the places. Now I'm going to be adjusting that airflow. You can see how it's like blue, a little purple, but then when it starts drying, it's going to start giving you that little orange effect. So this is what's going to happen. So you're going to start spraying it on there, all on those highlighted areas that you did with that white. And then you're going to start seeing it turn blue, almost purple. Blue purple look. It's pretty cool if you want to go and keep it that color, like a purplish blue color, but I'll tell you right now, it's a optic illusion. When you start spraying with that, it's gonna like, man, this is super purple, but it's going on wet right now. Once it starts drying, it'll start turning the orange will start kicking its effect in, because orange is way more transparent than that blue. And all of a sudden, that orange, that red orange, will start bleeding through when it dries, and it starts turning black. And also, you can try to keep some of that highlights if you wanted to. I was just showing you that you can go all the way all over what I was spraying, and then I integrated highlights. So, but you can try to keep the highlights by being real specific on where you're spraying with that airbrush, being real precise, and then you can start getting that keeping some of that highlights there. But if you're gonna do that, you're gonna probably have to go a little bit brighter on the whites. I did this so I have a good coverage and showing you guys when it starts drying. Like, see that pauldron right there? It was purple. Now look at it, it's all turning black because it's drying. Yeah, see, it has that little blue hue to it still. So I'm going to hit it again, hitting the head, the shoulders, the backpack again, kind of getting it on there. And then you're going to start slowly watching how that blue look is starting to turn black. Hitting those outside of those legs again. And it's alright if you go and hit a little bit over the warm colors that you put on the inside of the legs, just a little bit. It's not going to hurt nothing. It just kind of changes it a little bit different of a off shade of a black. So I mean, that's what we're trying to get here, is some black armor. You can see how I'm hitting it pretty heavy on that backpack there, because I saw, and then look at that. It's just automatically slowly drying and then just turning black. But when you start having the light shine on it very brightly, you're going to start seeing those colors that you mixed bleeding through. And it's such a crazy, unique, awesome style, great technique to have under your belt. go. See that? Went from having that purplish look, giving it like one more coat, and then look at that. Just all turned black. Isn't that incredible? And it has such a great appeal to it. That's why I like it so much. Than just dealing with just an acrylic black, you know, and then adding like your grays and blues or whatever to do the same, doing the same thing as you see right now. Look at that. Look at that. Black armor right in the making. Bam. 4 colors, all liquitex ink. All right, and then I've got to wait and let this dry, and then we're going to go and hit the next batch here. So here comes this next batch. It's all nice and dry, but it has that sheen look. That's what I was talking to you guys back previously. So that little sheen, you know, has that semi-gloss that's on there. So you see that I busted out that previous white that we have, and it was starting to dry a little bit, so I had to add a little bit more airbrush thinner in it. Now we're gonna integrate highlights. I'm gonna take some of that cold blue, that blue and orange mix that we got, the cold color. So I'm gonna sit here and start mixing it in there, and you can see that it's like really light purple blue look. I even added a little bit more to it because it really pops, like really pops on that black armor when you do this. And again, you're working with a bright color, so when you start getting up to the airbrush, you want high volume air, very little paint. And so this one here takes me probably the longest out of the whole segment. Is because I didn't want to take more takes than I need to and trying to get this thing to flow properly. So see that? Good bubbles, good work. And this is where I myself was getting a little shaky. So you're going to see me balance myself right with my thumb. And so I'm looking, reflecting, testing on my base just to see how it's coming out. And then you're going to see me just, I push the trigger down, it's all air, and then I'm just slowly pulling back the trigger. Pow, 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 pow. Just back and forth. Plop, 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 plop. Putting almost like little tiny spots right next to each other, like spot, 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 spot. So then I'm just rotating it into the light, getting my like highlights, the reflections. Bam. See, now that's a solid piece. You saw that? And so now I'm starting to balance everything on my thumb because you can see my airbrush right there is getting a little shaky. And you see how close I am with that? Just smash down. Just a smash down. Super close. Lot of air. Barely pulling back the trigger. Because it was still kind of thick. We could have thinned it down probably a little bit more, but I didn't want to have the firework display when you shoot too much paint with that much air, and then all of a sudden it spreads apart in like 8 different places, and it looks like a firework that exploded. So just hitting up in the knees. I did one on the top part of the knee, and then I did a little bit of reflection on the bottom part of the knee, showing that reflection going up that side of the, I don't know what part of the leg of that is, like the shin guard piece. See that right there? You see how that on the paper where it gives you that firework explosion? That's what you're trying to avoid on here. You can probably go back to your cold colors if you need to kind of clean that up a little bit, but I made that really big because that leg was sticking out, so I really wanted a lot of pressure going through there. I probably took a little bit more, Yeah, airbrush thinner because I was having a hard time. It was still really thick and not really wanting to come out. It's going to happen, especially when you're using airbrush thinner. The tip of the needle is going to dry a lot quicker on you. So, but I didn't want to put flow improver because it just takes too long for it to dry. Readjusting myself, and then now you can see my thumb right there, so I can keep myself a little bit balanced. And then you can see I'm just making little pop, 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 all the way up and down that bad boy. So this segment here is the one that took me the longest. Just take your time, rotate it in the light, see where your reflections are. You can probably put like a single line, 2 lines, whatever. You can see how I made this one kind of large because his leg's really stuck out there. So I figured that would be the biggest, brightest point of a reflection, you know. Perfect. You see that? Wow. Super bright. Now, these are just highlights. These are not edge highlights. These are just regular highlights. Edge highlights come in the next segment. So this one there, this took me a lot longer. I was having some difficulties with the airbrush because I haven't cleaned it, because you guys, if you ever seen me on my Twitch stream, you know I don't clean my brushes, whether they're airbrushes or regular brushes. I'm notorious of abusing my equipment. So I was still having some difficulties with my airbrush, and I think it just needed to be a full cycle clean out. So see me just popping this line, blah 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 blah, all air, very little paint coming out, just pow 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 pow. It's just perfect. Bam bam bam. Want a little connection right there, just yeah, give it a little bit there. Perfect. Going up, trying to just follow those reflection lines. You see how it went up from the back of his leg to the mid part of the thigh, and now I'm doing the butt cover, the bottom cover, and then you see me just bringing out some crazy little bright spots there. I'll show you guys when it's done. I have to get in the right position. There you go. See that? Brow, brow. And we're going to work on the back of that leg. You see where that light of my lamp is reflecting off that black armor because it's still shiny? I'm falling right up that line. Pow, 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 pow. Look at that line. Boom. So nice. There we go. Man, I always that front shin cover piece, I always do that edge right there. Pow pow pow. Beautiful. There we go. Doing the feet. Feet are important. Bling bling. Then I'm getting really close and personal because that knife thing that he's holding in his hand, kind of interfering with the airbrush a little bit. So I was having some difficulties. I was just pushing that airbrush straight up in there, so I don't get too big of a cone when you shoot out of the airbrush. The further away you pull back, the bigger the cone it is. The closer you get, the thinner the line is. So you can see I'm just kind of really pushing it in there. Trying not to get too huge of a highlight. Wanting to keep these things very crisp, precise. Making sure that we put them in the right spots. Those knees, man. Those knees, baby. Look at that. Look at all those highlights. It's gorgeous. Hitting some parts there. Collar that goes around the head. Very important. Make sure you get that good reflection there. And this part here was just the black armor, so I was just focusing on the main armor piece. I didn't finish the completed model. I was just showing you guys just the black armor itself. If you want the full model complete, we can keep doing more videos. Just leave comments below. You can see I'm hitting the head. And of course I pulled it right off of camera. But it was just trying to get into right where the ear is. Like the little comm piece on the ear. Had to turn it really close to me. And then the top part of his forehead. The little mohawk piece that sits on the top. And then you see me emphasizing it a little bit more. Just pow, pow, pow. Doing a little bit of the pauldron. Now we're getting into the backpack. Round spots, I never make a line. I always make it like circular. When I do highlights, little, and then go on the back side and make it really small. Because it's going to be reflecting light off of some other part of the armor. So you just got to do that. Makes the eyeballs, tricking your eyeballs. Just trick those eyeballs. Doing the top part of that backpack there. All air, barely pulling back that needle. Just like little tiny little rhythms, just like whoop, 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 just bunch of air. Just constantly having air coming out of the gun and just slowly pull back that trigger. Once you let go of the trigger and push down again, it'll give you a splatter effect. So every time, just caution when you do that. Anytime that you let go of the trigger and there's no airflow coming, it gives you a little buildup at the end, especially on your bright pigmented colors, and it'll give you that little spackle effect right when you fire it again. So if you do let go, just kind of press down on the trigger away from your figure and then go back to your figure while the air is still flowing, and then start feeding those highlights. So I'm just kind of sparkling out that backpack. Yeah, see all those great reflections there? Solid. Just solid. And it's kind of emphasizing a little bit more in some areas, hitting more of that backpack. Now we're going into the hands, hitting some of those hands. A lot of space, a little bit of time in my audio, just kind of holding off. So yeah, I'm just finishing up the nice little bit of touches there, up on the arm. Nice, good reflections right there. Really liking it, giving it a kind of a twirl around to see how the lights are going. And then kind of going right up into the collar again. A little bit on the side of the head, the ears. Just kind of giving those great little reflections that we need. And then that's how you're highlighting the armor. I'm going something where you're going really dark color and you're going something very bright color over top. but it gives you that gray and everything else in it. Oh, just stunning. Love it. Just love it. A little bit more on that backpack, probably right on that that grill. Just kind of pow, 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 pow. Give a little light reflection off of that too. Looks stellar. And there it is. Completely done. Letting it sit, and then now we come up into the final part here. And this final part is the best kind of highlights you got. The edge highlights, baby. Edge highlights. Alright, so I'm pulling out a little bit more acrylic white. I'm putting some more white in there. I didn't put enough, so you'll see me go down and put a little bit more as we're working. More Airbrush Thinner, so we can get some flow off of this. The trick is when you're starting to use your regular brush. Alright, cleaning up your brush. Every time that you clean your brush, and then you dip in it, because I'm using a sable brush, so it's holding a lot of moisture. So when you clean it, it makes the paint run on you. So you see me doing a little trace highlighting. Saw that I had probably a little too much moisture, and then just slightly, very light brush pressure, very light. And then I'm just kind of just knocking out some edge highlights. The best highlights you got right there. This is what makes Black Armor pop, just to let you know. This is some right crazy, a little bit more. You saw that? A little bit more acrylic white, white ink. There we go. Got to brighten it up a little bit more. Needs to be brighter than your highlight that you sprayed on there, right? Just keep wiping it off. Very light brush pressure. Doing some tracing edge highlighting right there. And this is the final part, guys. This is what makes Black Armor explode, is those edge highlights. So what you're doing is that you're tracing just like you do in a color book. Just hit all the lines there. You can tron this out. I've never seen where you put too many highlights, but normally the things that pretty much emphasizes the figures and the parts, so it doesn't all look just like all black. You're going to define these parts. Now you can see just tracing up all those lines. Space Marines are probably the easiest out of the bunch. Super easy. They got such nice crisp 90-degree angle lines. You just see me just kind of just popping those things. Boom, boom, boom. Really put on those edge highlights. And then it just right across the highlights that you sprayed on your gun, and then right on the tip of the toe, just giving that little bling right off of there. Look at that. And then we have this whole segment here, whole entire segment, just edge highlighting that entire figure. Just so nice. Just very light brush pressure. I'm trying not to clean my brush when I'm doing this, because I don't like having too much moisture on the brush, because it gets too much moisture, too much water, and then it just gets real big fat lines. I wanted to keep those lines super crisp, super thin, just using the tip of the brush to make the lines, using the base side there, just very light brush pressure, just tracing those lines out. But then if you're starting to force it too much, you're going to make a mistake, so make sure you just keep refilling. And then that there is just like there's a little gap between the pieces of armor there. I just highlighted the bottom. If you did both lines, it looks a little off. So if you just do one, regardless if it's the bottom or top, whatever is you're choosing. Now I'm doing a double tracer. Watch that. See that? Double edge highlighting right there. Once you get better at edge highlighting, you can do stuff like that. Touching both. Pow. Just light brush pressure. See, and then you're starting to define every little piece on that model. See, now this is the part you're going to see. I cleaned my brush off because I thought it was getting a little sticky, and this is a mistake. Because you see me keep constantly dipping back in there because I was trying to pull the moisture off the brush, and then this is where it starts getting a little bit fatter on some of these lines here. And then having his arm in my way made it really difficult. And you can spend a bajillion years edge highlighting like that. But yeah, really defining the knees. You know, just make the definitions come and make it pop out. And that's what all these edge highlights are for. It's really accentuating the figure, the line work, all that stuff. So I'm sitting here just popping through this whole segment this way. Now you can see that I made those two little lines right there. So I did the front part of the kneecap, the little piece that sticks up. Then I made two lines of reflection, and then I edge highlighted the back one. Now I'm doing it on the other side. Did it on both sides, giving it that little bling, and then edge highlighting both lines. That's how you make that kneecap pop. Try to go up inside the stomach piece there, because everything just looks 2D when it's completely covered in black like that. Even with the highlights that you sprayed on there for the reflections, that edge highlight is what's going to define each piece on that model. So now I'm tracing around that chest piece, right where the Aquila is. Let's get those lines going there. Yeah. Now you can really tell that it's becoming a Space Marine there. Working on the hands. Hands can be difficult, but just kind of just edge up those lines, and that's all you got to do. And then I just take one right where the collar of the wrist is, and then the other one right where the forearm is. That's all you need. You don't have to do every single line. You're just trying to just define it. Doing a little bit from the elbow there. Going in between that little, you know, that that point on the elbow. Giving a little bit of space, working from below. Bam, giving it curvature. Doing the bottom plate. Very nice. Just cutting those lines in, just cutting them in. There we go. Like every time that it was fighting with me, I just kept redipping into the paint. Don't want to fight it, because if you fight it, you're pushing too hard, which gives too many bristles, and then all of a sudden you get way too many line work on there. Way too many lines. There we go. Beautiful. Look at that. Now it's time to work on the top piece. Collar. Trace that outer edge. Hit the other piece of the outer edge. Now watch. I'll make some lines right there. Oh, I'm tracing. Oh, okay. Never mind. I'm edge highlighting the inside of the collar now. So only time that I emphasize on those, because those things stick out the most, then watch. Pow. 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 Blam. Blam. A little bit of blinging off of the collar right there. Doing the hand here, and then that part there is that's a place I forgot to actually do a highlight spray. You can go back with the airbrush and do it, but then you can also do this. Watch. It'll be coming up here in just a second. After I get everything else traced. Elbows. Okay. Then I'm like, oh, I forgot. So just do this. See how I showed you? Just right across the top. Bam. Same thing like you did with the airbrush, but a little bit more distinctive right off the hand. Because it is the only thing that's just kind of sticking out there. So now, yeah, now we're doing the helmet. Doing the inside of his face mask. There you go. Now we're bringing it out. Showing that face. Now we're doing a little mohawk piece. There we go. Showing that definition of that helmet there. Now I haven't doing much of anything on that helmet. Just do the mohawk pieces. Do anything that's kind of a hard edge. And then just kind of trace highlight those. Bam. There we go. Now you have the definition of the head right there. And then of course you do your eyes and all that stuff and make them glow or what have you. It's perfect. Alright, now we're working on the backpack. Backpack has a lot of nice 90-degree lines. Super huge 90-degree lines. Like so easy. You see that? Double edge highlighting right there. Wow. Here we go. Double edge highlight. Bam. Using the same brush, hitting two lines at the same time. Just get the right feel for the angle and then just plow and knock it out. We're almost done here. Getting all the edge highlights like we want them. Hitting the little top piece of that backpack. Just shine those things. Who cares? Doing the top piece. of the backpack right there, because there was just like an engravement of showing like the little line in the backpack, doing the bottom line right there, and then right across the grid, just make a nice little sweet little diagonal fade line right there. Double line the backpack, that little circular piece in the back. Bam. Bam. 4 points on the circular. Doing double edge highlighting there. That takes some practice. There we go. Now I'm going to sit here and make a big fat reflection right there. Right off the back. Bam. Nice and shiny. You can definitely add more or take away, whatever you want to do. Now we're going to sit here and just line up the rest of the backpack so we can get some forms happening here, because otherwise it just looks like nothing. It looks like 2D. We got to make sure that the 3D comes out of it. It looks like a 3D model. Kind of hit those things. Popped. Popping out. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect right there. Put some nice edge highlights and you got that thing rolling. It's perfect. Now we're going to be doing something a little bit crazy, a little bit different here. Just make sure you get all the edge highlights that you're going to do, and then I'm going to show you guys something really spectacular here. So we did the highlights with the airbrush, right? And then with the highlights, you can edge highlight right next to it or on it to emphasize the reflection off of the armor piece. So yeah, we're going to see here a little bit of the grill on the face. Not too much. You do too much on that face and then it kind of gets kind of out of hand. I normally just put little dots by the grills if I can. Yeah, look at that. Nice. Now we're going to emphasize those highlights now. Nope, never mind. I totally fooled you guys. Inside that kneecap, emphasize that kneecap. Make sure that it looks like it's sticking out. And then boom, you see me put that line right there on the highlight. Bam. Always forgetting spots. Happens to everybody. Happens to everybody. I'm telling you. You always forget an edge highlight. Now we're getting down to the very nitty gritty of the video. Black armor. Now watch. I'm going to start emphasizing those lines now. Watch. Wow. Wow. Putting an edge highlight for a harsh reflection. You see that reflection just changed how that reflection worked. Now watch, putting a line straight down right on that highlight. Bam. Making it sharp. Making that bam. You see that? Oh, just changed edge. Just changes everything right there. Edge highlights are the best highlights. Look at that. Making that line, cleaning it up. Doing 2 lines on this one. Then watch, cut a line right between there. Pow. Look at that reflection. Just totally made it non-metallic metal right there. So you just go through all your highlights and just kind of give it that bling effect. Look at that, boom. Bam. Perfect. Hard line. Bam. Right in where you did the highlights. Just put a little line there. Changes your life right there. Of course, you can't see the transformation on that one because the arm is in the way, of course. But then just bam, look at that. That looks solid. Looks perfect. Non-metallic metal. Black armor, liquitex inks. If you like this, make sure you subscribe. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell for another new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this, and let me know in the comments.